Greetings, family. This is Leah, Salmon, the Naturally You coach, best-selling author, speaker, nutritionist, life coach, live blood analyst, on a mission to help 100,000 Black women to eat for health, think for happiness, and live in harmony, or I call Becoming Naturally You. And welcome to my live video today, where I'm going to be talking about herbal medicines for heavy periods. So before we get into the video, if you haven't already had a chance to, or if you don't even know about the online 9-week online program that's going to be launching on the 30th of April, called the Black Mama Circle, then please go ahead and check that out if you are a Black mother of African, Caribbean, or similar descent, and you want to give yourself the time and space to dedicate towards helping you to improve your life and health naturally. Then I would highly recommend you go over and check it out, and you can find out more about that program at blackmamacircle.com or thenaturallyyoucoach.com/Black Mama Circle. And the 25% off book sale that I've been running on my website is going to be actually finishing on Sunday, the 19th of April. So this Sunday, the 19th of April, is going to be the last time you get the opportunity to get 25% off all of my books, which is Leah's Raw Food Feast, Becoming Naturally You, this book that we're going to be speaking about today called 30 Days to Better Periods and Womb Health, and my latest book called Health, Happiness and Harmony, which is a guided journal. So all of those are going to be available at 25% off until this Sunday midnight. Thank you everyone who's coming into the live, joining me now with the live. Thank you for being here. So I'm just going to make sure I can hear myself and everything is behaving itself as it should be. And yep, that looks fine. Okay, so I hope you guys are all enjoying your 3 days off. We're in coronavirus lockdown right now. We're in COVID-19 lockdown, so it might be a bit longer than 3 days that you've had off. But for the kind of Easter holiday period where things have slowed down a little bit, I hope you've enjoyed those last few days. So we are going to get into it now. So as I showed you, this is one of the books that I have written. As some of you may know, I'm an author of 6 books, and this is one of my books, and it's called 30 Days to Better Periods and Womb Health. Now, the reason I wrote this book is because my whole journey into natural health started with me developing a womb health condition when I was in my teens. When I was 17, I began to bleed between my periods, and that lasted for about 2 years. So after some research, I realized the condition was called metrorrhagia, or now they more refer to it as intermenstrual bleeding. So it's basically when you have your regular monthly period, but then between your monthly periods, you also bleed, or you menstruate, or you have some kind of blood loss. And that was happening to me for 2 years. My journey into natural health started when, after 2 years, I eventually and reluctantly went to the doctors for some help and advice. And the reason I hadn't gone to the doctors in that 2 years is because I was too worried that if I did present to the doctors, who I already had what I would call a healthy fear of the orthodox medical community. I was just concerned that if I did present, they would either try and operate on me or drug me or ignore me. And the latter happened. So whilst I initially did feel abandoned by the medical community, who I had, finally plucked up the courage to go and see, and they basically said, if it gets any worse, come back in 6 months, without even any offer of some medication or an operation. And I was on an interview on Black Eyes TV on Sunday in the International Sister Circle show. If you haven't already checked that out, please go ahead and go to YouTube, and you can find the Black Eyes TV channel, and the whole replay of the live interview is there. We were talking about women's health and home education. We were talking about my journey, and I was saying in that even though I didn't want them to operate on me or drug me, it would have at least shown that they were making some kind of an effort to, address the situation. If they had at least offered me something that I could have said no to, but they literally just told me, no, go back, go away, and if it doesn't get better, or if it gets any worse in 6 months, come back. So even though I did initially feel abandoned by the medical community, it was the catalyst that springboarded me into taking control of my own health and understanding and recognizing that I had the power to have an impact on my health, and I didn't need to wait for other people to help me, and I certainly didn't need to rely on a medical system that I didn't actually even innately trust. And there was so much power in nature, there was so much power in food, there was so much power in my own body. All three of those things just needed to be tapped into and harnessed. And through doing some research and making some diet and lifestyle changes and using herbal medicines and aromatherapy oils, that is how I recovered from my womb health challenge. And that was the start of my whole journey, because I then wanted to help and empower other women and other people to take their health into their own hands the way that I had, and turn to nature as opposed to pharmaceutical drugs the way that I had, and to get the success that I did. So this book actually documents the journey that I went through and everything. Woo! It documents the journey that I went through, and it shares everything that I did to recover from my particular condition, because within 2 weeks the symptoms subsided, and within 3 months the condition was completely gone. So it documents everything that I went through and what I did, and what I would recommend if I was doing it again now, what I would do differently this time. But it also speaks about other conditions as well, because I've never had fibroids or endometriosis or PCOS, but there is information on those conditions in there, things like infertility. It speaks about the different natural alternatives that you can use to help your womb health and improve your periods, from aromatherapy and, again, herbal medicine, lifestyle changes, how exercise can help, vaginal steaming, yoni eggs, all of those things. It speaks about the dangers of some of the feminine hygiene products that we typically use and natural alternatives to them. It speaks about the medications, some of the medications that we are sometimes offered when we do have menstrual challenges, and why you may want to rethink using those and move to a more natural approach. And then it's got a plan that you can follow for 30 days to help you improve your womb health. So it's a complete book that documents everything. But today we're just going to be speaking about, or I'm just going to be focusing on the herbal medicine that can be used for heavy periods. So, and just to clarify what a heavy period is, because some sisters don't even realize that they have what most professionals would consider to be a heavy period. Some women are just like, oh, I just thought that was what a heavy period is. On the other side of things, some sisters feel like their period is really heavy, and when they share how much blood they are losing or how many times they're changing themselves, some women are like, really? You think that's heavy? Like, that's me on a very, very good day, and you think that's heavy. And that's good, because what I have said to some sisters is that if you feel it's heavy, it could be super light to someone else, but if you feel it's heavier than you are comfortable with, then you can still aim to make improvements on it from there. But I do let those sisters know you are not technically bleeding in an unhealthily, detrimentally heavy way. However, we're all starting at different points. So if you are have an amazing period to someone else, if to you it feels like it's too heavy, then that's definitely your reality, and you can definitely still use the recommendations that I'm going to be speaking about today to reduce it down to what you feel is a more acceptable flow. Now, but to be honest, I have worked, obviously this is my line of work, so I have worked with sisters who everyone would agree is having an exceptionally heavy period. So what most healthcare professionals would agree is that even though all women are different, we would consider if you are having to change your pad or your tampon, on the hour, like on an hourly basis. So after an hour, if you're wearing a tampon, after an hour, the tampon is leaking. If you're wearing a pad, after an hour, the whole length of the pad is saturated. Not just the middle part of the pad, the whole pad is saturated, and you might even be leaking as well. If that is the situation, every hour for several hours in a row, and even more so, even, you know, for the whole day, for the whole 24 hours, for multiple days, then that would be a heavy period. Now, again, in the holistic world, you're going to have some natural health professionals who have done a lot of work naturally on improving their period, and they'd be like, wow, if you're bleeding for more than 4 days, that's a heavy period. Even if you're not saturating your pads, that's still way too much. However, I understand that most sisters that I'm working with are in a situation where we have grown up in a westernized world. We've eaten Western foods. We haven't been in touch with nature. We haven't been able to get sunlight exposure. We're not always able to get so much exercise, or our lifestyle is not as active as maybe we would want. So I understand that the vast majority of sisters that I work with, they are going to have heavier periods than what someone who is, you know, exceptionally healthy would consider normal. So I would normally say to a sister that if they are filling a pad or a tampon every hour, they have to change every hour, or even every 2 hours, to be honest, on a daily basis, on a hourly basis. And if that is the situation for a number of days, they're going to be losing excessive amounts of blood, which is going to be unhealthy to them, and that's definitely what we would consider heavy. Now, if you are already at the stage, if you from the beginning have to wear two pieces of sanitation, so if you have to wear a tampon and a pad, and not just to go to sleep at night, but you have to do that for several days, then that is already what we would consider a very heavy period. Now, some sisters will use things like menstrual cups, and with the menstrual cup, they'll wear a cloth pad underneath it just to catch any of the overflow. And it can happen with menstrual cups, that if you don't get the position just right, it can make a little opening, which means that your flow can leak out of the cup and onto the pad. But when you actually remove the cup is not full. The cup is half full or even a quarter full. So if you're using two methods of feminine hygiene products in that respect, that's not because you have an excessive flow. That's because you are just catching any leakages that could be caused by a badly positioned menstrual cup. But if you know that you are using a menstrual cup and you're using a pad, and on a regular basis and for a number of months, you are filling the cup and the pad is saturated, and when you empty the cup, it's full, and when you have to change that cloth pad, then that is an excessive flow. That is a very heavy flow. So what we would kind of ideally look for is a cycle that was roughly 3 to 4 days in length. So it lasted about 3 to 4 days, maybe 5 days, and it was what we would kind of call moderate or light, a moderate or light flow with minimal or no clots, in fact, and as little pain as possible, as little pain or discomfort as possible, if any at all. And you are only bleeding, you are only having this flow once a month, because again, my condition was that I was actually bleeding twice a month. Thank you everyone who's coming in, by the way. Sorry, I haven't said hi. But if you are just joining me, we are talking about herbal medicines for heavy periods, and my name's Leah Salmon, the Naturally You coach. So again, we're talking about changing your pad, probably your pad or your tampon being filled every 3 to 4 hours, and that slowly tapering off. So it's quite common for sisters to have a slightly heavier period on the first day or two, and then it slows down or completely tapers off, and there's just maybe spotting or very light discharge on the last couple of days. That's more what we would consider to be a ideal flow. Greetings. Greetings, Fran. Thank you for joining me, sis. Lovely to see you. Now, there are a variety of reasons why a sister would bleed excessively, why she would have what we would consider to have a heavy flow, and it could be anything from fibroids to PCOS, endometriosis, the contraception that they're using, if you're using an IUD or a coil. It could be and it's normally going to have some root in some kind of hormonal instability, some kind of hormonal deficiencies or instabilities. Now, what normally happens is the reason why you will have a thicker flow is for some reason, for one of the many reasons, your womb lining has filled up to a point where it's much thicker than it would need to be. So most sisters know that at your period is blood that has accumulated on the walls of your uterus through the month, so that when you release an egg from your fallopian tube, if that egg gets fertilized, as it's coming down the fallopian tube, if it gets fertilized, by the time it comes to the opening of your womb, the space in the middle of your uterus, if it has been fertilized, there's a nice thick bed of blood on the side of the uterus for that fertilized egg to embed itself in, so that it can be nourished and fed as it grows into a baby. And if the egg comes down the fallopian tube and into the cavity of the womb and no fertilization has occurred, then that unfertilized egg and the blood that's slowly been building up on the sides of your uterus all get released over a number of days in what we call your menstrual flow or your menstrual cycle. So the wall of the uterus only needs to build up a layer of blood that's so thick. It doesn't need to build up a very, very thick layer of blood. And if it is building up a layer of blood that's too thick, that's because it's been triggered to do so by the hormones that are being produced and released during that time. And that's why we talk about hormonal instabilities and other imbalances that are happening that create excessive bleeding. And that excessive bleeding is the blood breaking down, the blood that's been building up on the sides of the wall, that breaking down and being released. And when you see clots, because the blood is already in a kind of clotted state when it's building up on the sides of your womb, it's in a slightly thickened state when it's building up on the walls of your uterus. So when you have a very heavy flow and there's clots, that's because the blood has been released before it's had time for those clots to be softened out and kind of broken down into a regular blood flow. And that's the muscle contractions that's because as you're when your egg has not been fertilized, then your body's like, oh, the egg hasn't been fertilized, so we're going to release everything. And when your brain gets the message, okay, we're going to release the blood that's accumulated and this unfertilized egg in a menstrual flow because no pregnancy has occurred, then other hormones get released which contract the walls of your uterus to slowly break down that bed of blood and release it. But when there's an imbalance in the hormone levels that are released, then sometimes too much of that hormone that contracts the womb is released. And that's when the contractions become very painful, because they shouldn't be painful. They should just be enough to gently break down the blood that's been accumulated on the sides of the wall. But when we get those severe cramps, that's when too much of those hormones have been released. And it's literally the same hormone that pushes a baby out. It's the same hormone that gives you the contractions during childbirth. And it can have that effect. It just depends on how much of it is released, which is why hormone balance is such an important factor when it comes to womb health. So and the reason why you don't want a heavy flow, because, some people might be thinking, oh, it's just a heavy flow. It's only inconvenient. It's only, it's not like a huge problem. Most sisters realize it does have more implications than it simply being inconvenient and expensive to continually top up with so many menstrual products to keep up with the flow that's coming out, because it can actually lead to you developing deficiencies because you're losing more blood than you should should. So your body doesn't have as much blood and red blood cells circulating around your body, delivering nutrients, delivering oxygen, the hemoglobin, the iron. Your body is losing iron through the blood loss as well, which can lead to anemia. If you already have anemia, it can make your anemia even worse. And when you do have anemia through blood loss, it can lead to things like weak hair, tiredness, lethargy, nervous exhaustion, cold hands and feet, poor circulation. There are actually a lot of physical health challenges that you can experience when you are losing too much blood. So the most important thing to understand is that prevention is always better than cure, because even though there are things that you can take, there are stronger things that you can take, more pharmaceutical drug level things that you can take that can stop the bleeding during your period more efficiently and more effectively. But they do come with side effects, and we're going to speak a little bit about those later. So when we're dealing with natural health, there are things that you can take naturally that can help to reduce the blood flow to some degree during the period. But what you really want to aim to do is, if you know you have heavy periods, is to start way before your period starts. Start either as soon as your period is finished, or when you know your period is due in about 2 weeks, which is why in this book it's called 30 Days to Better Periods and Womb Health, because the aim of the book is for you to start on the plan 30 days before you know your period's due to start, or at least 3 weeks before you know your period's due to start. And from that point, that is when you will build up and you will take the steps necessary with your diet, with your lifestyle, using herbal remedies, using other natural remedies. You will do all these things in preparation for your period, so that by the time your period comes, your body has already gone through some cleaning and clearing and cleansing and rebalancing and renourishing and hydrating, and all of those things will result in a better period. As opposed to, oh, the period's here, oh no, the pains are here, oh my gosh, the discomfort's here, the clots are here, the heaviness is here, let me do something about it now. Because at that point, it's always going to be more challenging for you to get a good result, as opposed to you leading up to it, you building up to it, you preparing your body for it. That's where you get the real benefit. And again, we are also looking at a holistic approach. So it's also not a situation where you can just take some herbs, go ahead and buy the herbs that I recommend, make no other changes, and expect those herbs to balance out everything else that's happening in your body, as well as then getting to your womb and help balancing that out as well. You do need to focus on your diet, including exercise, hydration, and natural health products, and doing it in combination, and doing it with some kind of plan, and doing it with some kind of knowledge of why you're doing all the different bits and how the different bits fit together. That's where you're going to get the real results. And again, that's why in the book there is the 30-day plan, so that you don't have to work out what it is that you're going to do. You simply follow the plan, and you follow the plan on a monthly basis for a number of months, and definitely within 30 days. If you stick to the plan within 30 days, I haven't worked with someone who hasn't had beneficial results. Even if their period starts in 2 weeks, we put in the work for 2 weeks and they get the results. They get some level of results. And the more they work at it, the better their periods become. So you want to make sure that you are working preventatively, and you want to also make sure you're working holistically. Now, the herbs that I would recommend, and again, when you speak to a herbal medicine practitioner, and if you're working with a herbal medicine practitioner specifically, or you're working with a natural health coach specifically, they'll be able to look at your whole situation and recommend herbs that will specifically help your body at that time. They will specifically address all of your health challenges, and they will understand or get some understanding of the specific cause of your heavy periods, because again, everyone's heavy periods are down to different things. It could be endometriosis, PCOS, it could be metrorrhagia like myself, it could have been menorrhagia. There's so many different reasons why you could be experiencing the heavy bleeding. So when you're working with someone individually, they'll be able to give you a more specific set of recommendations. However, the recommendations that I'm going to give, or the herbs that I'm going to recommend, are the ones that I have put into combinations for myself, which definitely worked. I've worked with clients who have used these recommendations anecdotally, using other research, studying herbal medicine myself. So these are 3 of the many herbs that have a brilliant affinity with the womb and have been shown to reduce heavy blood flow. And again, not on their own, almost always in combination with other herbs and other practices, and making sure that diet is involved, hydration is involved, because very oftentimes you could be taking certain supplements, natural remedies, but you're not even hydrated enough for your body to be able to get the nutrients out of them, because your digestive tract is so dehydrated it cannot extract the nutrients from your food efficiently. So those kind of things do need to be taken into consideration. And I will 100% admit and agree that there are some herbal medicines that you can literally do nothing but take the herbal medicine and you will still get the result from it. I'm just not in favor of that approach, because I do feel that even though you are getting the benefit with the specific part of your health you're looking at that time, which is your womb health, you would get a much more long-lasting effect if you were to do things, you were to take those herbal medicines in conjunction with adding more movement to your life, making sure you're drinking more, adding more healthy whole foods, especially raw foods, to your diet as well. You will get a more long-lasting impact, because what can sometimes happen is people will just take the herbal medicine or the aromatherapy oil or the homeopathic remedy, and they won't make any other changes. And then what they find is that they are relying on those herbs in order to get the results. So as opposed to the herbs helping your body get back into balance, because they're doing it in conjunction with all the other things you're doing, you almost begin to rely on the herbal medicine in the same way people rely on pharmaceutical drugs. If you stop taking the herbs, if you stop taking the remedies, then all the symptoms come back, because you didn't do any work to address the cause and to strengthen your body naturally in the first place. Greetings, Chantel. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's see if I can get your comment up, my sis. So, greetings, sis. Sorry about that. Okay, so, sis, let's try and get your comment up. Thank you for commenting, dear. Let's get your... Ooh. Sorry, sis, the book is amazing. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. That book is amazing. I bought it back in 2017 from you at the Black History Studies Black Film Festival and Market. It has helped me tremendously, and I still use the herbs and organic sanitary products now, and I've since moved and misplaced it all. So I need to find it again and continue to improve my health. Thank you so much for that, sis. I appreciate you sending that message, and I'm glad that you got a good result from it as well. That is good news. I like hearing that. I like getting good feedback on the books. Thank you so much for that. So, oh, goodness me, sorry. Technology. So, okay, the herbs that I'm going to recommend, which sis has probably seen in the book. So there are three of the many herbs that have got an affinity with the womb and have been shown to help to reduce heavy periods. And these herbs actually also, at least 2 of them, do actually help with the pain associated with heavy periods as well. So when it says reduces the pain, it reduces the heaviness of the periods and the length of time that you're bleeding for. Because what will sometimes happen with some people is that they have a very, very heavy period, but their period only lasts for 3 days or 4 days. Or you have sisters who have got a period which is moderate, so they may be filling a pad every 3 hours, but it's really full every 3 hours. But they have that 3-hourly full period, and they have that for like 7 to 10 days. And both of those situations, those would both be considered heavy bleeds. And these herbs have been shown to shorten the length of periods and reduce the heaviness of the periods. They're part of a group. All these 3 herbs are part of a group of herbs called anti-hemorrhagic herbs, as an anti and hemorrhage and ick. Anti-hemorrhagic herbs. One of them is also referred to as a Stytic herb as well. Stytic herb as well. And these are all a group of herbs which have kind of astringent properties, which is like tightening, restricting blood flow, reducing blood flow, and again, anti-hemorrhagic or hemostatic herbs. So they basically are all involved in reducing excessive bleeding naturally where necessary. So some of these herbs are also used for things like nosebleeds, and bleeding hemorrhoids and those types of things as well. So the 3 herbs that I would recommend, and you can take these in combination, and I would normally recommend you take them daily in a tea, and you would take them 2 to 3 times a day for 2 weeks before you start. And again, if you are already taking pharmaceutical drugs, then you would definitely need to, or I would highly recommend you run these herbs past your healthcare practitioner to make sure that there's no contraindications. If you're working with a herbalist, then they may be able to give you a combination that works more specifically for you. But this is a combination that is quite mild. It's not too aggressive. None of these herbs are herbs that you need to be licensed in order to get. You can get most of these by ordering them online. You can find good suppliers. And yeah, you would put them in a combination of equal quantities. You could get the loose herbs. I do like loose herbs. I do recommend you get loose herbs. But if you can't get loose herbs, you can buy tea bags, boxes of tea bags of each of these. And then you could either open the tea bags and mix everything together, or if you're making a tea, you would put 3 tea bags into a cup, pour water in it, and then water it down until you have kind of 2 or 3 cups worth. Then you have that batch split into however many times you want to have it throughout the day. So if you want to have it twice, you would split the batch into 2 portions, and you would have one portion at one point of the day and the other portion at the other point of the day. If you are going to combine the herbs into, buy the loose herbs and you combine them that way in equal quantities, then you would combine all the herbs together, and then you would use a tablespoon to roughly 250 mils of water and let it steep, and then drain the herbs, separate the herbs from the liquid, and you would have that again 2 to 3 times a day, at least 2 weeks before, because you want these herbs to build up in your system so that they have the opportunity to do some rebalancing before your period actually starts. And again, in the book, the plan is all laid out for you. So in the 30 days to better periods in womb health, there is an actual 30-day plan, and it says day 1 do this, day 2 do that, and it tells you it tells you the day that you should buy the herbs or find the herbs or decide the herbs you're going to use or the natural remedies you're going to use, and then the day that you're going to actually start taking them and how many times you're taking them. It speaks about water, food, exercise, all that kind of stuff in there. Now, the herbs that I would recommend, or 3 of the many herbs that I would recommend, are number 1, lady's mantle. Lady's mantle. This is one of the herbs that's considered a kind of drying and binding menstrual regulating herb. The other one I would recommend is shepherd's purse. Shepherd's purse is definitely a very popular anti-hemorrhagic, hemostatic herb, reduces excessive blood flow. And the other one is yarrow. Now, I have like a whole page on yarrow in the book. I really love yarrow. Yarrow was definitely one of the herbs that I used extensively when I was recovering from my womb health challenges when I was younger. I continue to use it a few times throughout the rest of my life as well. My period did really, once it healed. Even though it was horrendous when it was horrendous, when I was able to heal it, it did. It's been good for the whole time. And there was a specific incident in the book that I spoke about where I did kind of let things go and things got a bit crazy with my period, but it has been quite just well behaved, let's say. I've been in balance. I've been looking after my womb health for some time now. But yarrow was a lifesaver. I absolutely loved that herb. It's got so many uses as well. And again, it's a menstrual regulator, it's a hemostatic. It's also got a slight pain relieving property to it as well, which is why it's useful for heavy and painful periods. It helps to reduce the pain. It helps to reduce the length and the heaviness of the period as well. So I would recommend you get a combination of those: lady's mantle, shepherd's purse, and yarrow. Now, what you can do, and again, like I said, you put them in equal quantities, and then you would have them twice or 3 times a day for about 2 weeks before your period starts. Now, the other herbs that you can add to that, because if you have had and you have a history of having heavy painful periods or heavy long periods, there's a likelihood that you may already be slightly iron deficient. So you can also add herbs like raspberry leaf. Most people have heard of raspberry leaf in its capacity of helping with pregnancies and childbirth, but it's also really good as an astringent as well. And it also is a good source of iron and vitamin C. So you are going to be losing, you would probably have lost a lot of iron. You could be borderline anemic if you do have challenges with this for a long time. So it is useful to have herbs that help to boost your iron. And it's also an astringent, so it helps to reduce excessive bleeding also. So raspberry leaf, you could add to that combination. You could also add yellow dock to that combination as well. Yellow dock is another herb that's amazing at replenishing lost iron stores. And you could also add nettle. Nettle is another brilliant herb that's very nutrient rich, very high in things like calcium, and calcium is one of the minerals that's found to be deficient in a lot of sisters who have womb health challenges. So it's also a very nutritious herb that you can add to replenish the iron and other minerals that could be lost in the excessive flow as well. I normally don't recommend you have combinations that have more than, unless they've been specifically put together, I don't tend to have combinations that have more than 3 or 4 herbs in them. So as well as the shepherd's purse, lady's mantle, and yarrow, you could maybe add one of those other herbs, or you could have the yellow dock tea or the nettle tea or the raspberry leaf tea separately from that herbal combination. Because even though herbs are natural and they're from the earth and that kind of thing, it doesn't mean that you can just chuck as many as you want into a pan and think that nothing is going to happen, because they're also powerful, dynamic, living organisms living medicines as well. And we do need to respect the power that they have and understand that combining them too much can have negative impacts as well. Just because they're natural, it doesn't mean that they're not going to have negative effects on you as much as they can have positive effects on you. Because to be honest, just taking one of the herbs, even if you can only get hold of one of them, just taking yarrow on its own, just taking lady's mantle, just taking shepherd's purse, sisters have had brilliant success with just one herb. I myself personally, if I only had one herb around, it would have been either Agnus castus or chasteberry vitex or yarrow. Those two were my 2 herbs, and even if I didn't have all the other combinations or I had run out of the others, as long as I had one of those 2, I was absolutely fine, because just even on their own they have so many uses and are so again, they're natural, dynamic. They're not like one nutrient that's been extracted from nature and it's been isolated. They are still the natural herb. They still have all of the properties. They still have, all of the nutrients and the phytonutrients and the essential oils and the volatile oils, and everything that makes them brilliant is still in there. These are not extracts. It's just the actual herbs that we're dealing with, which is why when you see herbs, they've got such a long list of benefits in them, because they are still in their complete form. So you could really get away with just doing, if you can only get hold of one, definitely just start on the one. If you can only do 2, if you only have those 3, they're still going to be very beneficial, and your body will, because you're taking these herbs, reducing the blood flow, your body is producing red blood cells all the time, and your body can get iron from the food that you're getting. So even if you can't add the additional herbs to boost your iron back up, just reducing the amount of blood you're losing is going to help to stabilize your anemia to a degree, and then you can address that through your foods at a later date. So I hope so again, these herbs are what I would recommend you use naturally before you consider, or before you maybe take on recommendations that you could be getting from your doctor. Because I know a lot of sisters who I work with have been recommended things like mefenamic acid or tranexamic acid, and those are 2 pharmaceutical drugs that are given to sisters who have very heavy and very painful periods, and they have steroidal actions. They're not the most natural things at all. And a lot of them have, because what those 2, the tranexamic acid is more what is given when there's just real heaviness in the periods. The mefenamic acid is given when you've got the very painful period, as well as losing a lot of blood. Both of those pharmaceutical drugs are normally given to patients who are losing blood rapidly. Maybe they've had a road traffic accident, or they've got some heavy internal bleeding. You know, they're life-saving herbs. They're life-saving medications. Don't get me wrong. If they're used the way that they need to be, they're life-saving. But because of a period, because you're losing a lot of blood through the period, that's not the only way to address it, is by taking these very strong pharmaceutical drugs. Because the consideration with using a lot of those pharmaceutical drugs, especially those two, is that they can have really damaging effects on your digestive tract. And again, we want to get to a point where you're using your food as your medicine. So you want to keep your digestive tract in good nick. You don't want your digestive tract being torn up just so you can reduce the heaviness and the pain of your periods, when you can reduce the heaviness and it's not because I don't want you to reduce the heaviness and the pain. There's just so many other ways that you can reduce the heaviness and the pain by acting preventatively and naturally, so you don't have to resort to, again, relying on a chemical compound of pharmaceutical drugs that may be able to reduce the pain and the heaviness. And again, the consideration is they don't always reduce the pain and the heaviness. I've worked with sisters and I've spoken to sisters who have taken the tranexamic acid and the mefenamic acid, and they still ended up in the same situation. They were like, I've taken this and it's not even working, or it worked initially and then it stopped working. It stopped having its impact, and they were still taking it. They were taking they had the steroidal impact, and it just wasn't giving them the effects. So they were taking these drugs, taking in these chemicals, overloading their liver and their kidney and all their organs of elimination, and they weren't actually even getting the benefit from it. So I would always recommend, I mean, of course, it's any sister is in complete control. Whatever you decide to do, whatever you feel is best for your health, 100% do that. If you feel that surgery is the best way, pharmaceutical drugs is the best way, 100%, go for that. I would always recommend, though, that if you don't feel comfortable with doing it, don't feel like it's the only option. If that's the way you want to go down the full pharmaceutical surgical route, 100% go for it. But if you feel, and this is the main consideration, a lot of sisters feel like they don't have any other options. And that's what so many other sisters, that's what this book, that's what this live is here to remind you, that you do have so many other options, so many other natural things that you can try before you resort to pharmaceutical drugs, surgeries, those kind of things, which have side effects that you may not even be aware of until you're experiencing them. Thank you so much, everyone who's joining me. Greetings, sis. Thank you so much for your comments. Let's see if I can see this one, darlings. Unexpected side effects and connection. Let's see if it's going to come back. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Sorry. Let's just have a look at this comment. So yeah, unpleasant side effects and disrupts your periods and patterns. Yeah, exactly, because that's another consideration, is that a lot of the pharmaceutical drugs will interfere. Not only will they not always do what they're actually giving them to you to do. So if they're meant to reduce the heaviness or reduce the length, they don't always actually do that. And then they can have so many other implications, not just on your digestive tract, give you skin eruptions, joint pains, nausea. And like you said, they can actually disrupt your cycle and make it last even longer. And some people have been told, it may make things worse before it makes things better. But in the vast majority of cases, and in fact almost all cases, when you do things naturally, when you use your food, hydration, exercise is really important and useful, and natural remedies, you don't normally get things getting worse before they get better. They just slowly get better, and sometimes quite quickly get better as well. Because again, when I was working on myself, I definitely saw improvements in the first 2 weeks. The symptoms were going in the first 2 weeks, and then after 3 months it went, and I haven't had it since. So, and that was 15, giving away my age. It's about 15 years ago now. So I know that it works. So again, Today we've been talking about herbal remedies for heavy periods. We touched on some of the causes, we touched on some of the implications of having heavy periods, and we spoke about some of the many herbs that you can use that can help to reduce the heaviness and the length of your periods. Now, in the link that's attached to this video, there is something that I created some time ago, which is called the Womb Wellness Gift Set. So it's a 3-part gift set that you can download for free. It comes with an Womb Wellness Eating Plan, which is from the book, the Womb Wellness Eating Plan, a 9-point checklist to improving your periods, and then an MP3 audio training where I explain the importance of the 9-point checklist. So if you want to use a tool, get a tool that you can use, or get some information that you can use that you can start working on now that can help improve your period in 30 days, or your womb health in 30 days, and more importantly, understand why it's important to take those steps and to do those 9 things every month, and have that eating plan as well. So the foods that I would recommend that can help your womb health in 30 days. And you can go to the link that's attached to this video right now and download that free gift. Or if there's no link around this video, you can go to my website, thenaturallyyoucoach.com/free stuff or freebies, and you will find all the freebies there, and it says free womb wellness gift set. Again, if you haven't already checked out the Black Mama Circle and you are a Black mother or a Black woman who wants to at some point become a mother, and you have children of any age, then I would invite you to come and join us in the Black Mama Circle, which is a 9-week online personal development and natural health program, which is going to be starting on Thursday, the 30th of April. And you can find out more about that program and join the program at a discounted rate until the 26th of April, which is the Sunday before we get started. You can find out all about that program at blackmamacircle.com or thenaturallyyoucoach.com/blackmamacircle. Again, the 25% off book sale where you can get this book as well as the 3 other books that I have available at the moment. You can get all physical books and ebooks all at 25% off. You can find out about all of that again at my website, thenaturallyyoucoach.com/shop. And that sale is going to be ending this Sunday, the 19th of April. So you can get 25% off any of my books until then. And as normal, I would recommend that you join my mailing list at thenaturallyyoucoach.com, so that I can keep you up to date with new videos and articles, podcasts, events, sales, special offers, online programs, all that good stuff. Because when you're on the mailing list, you actually get additional discounts on products and services. You find out about them before they are released, and it's an opportunity for me to stay in touch with you as we are not always on social media at the same time. Thank you again so much for joining me today on this live. Thank you for your comments and your participation. Please feel free to share this live video, this video, with any other sisters you feel who may benefit from learning about how herbal medicines can help to reduce heavy periods. I look forward to seeing you again on Wednesday, same time, 9:30 on Facebook, and I'm going to be going over onto Instagram now at 10 o'clock as well. Thank you again so much for joining me. Have a lovely evening. Take care and stay healthy.